For months now, we've been slowly but steadily stocking our basement shelves, freezers, and cold room with food that we grew right here on our 5.5 acre homestead. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears goes into growing enough food to feed a family of 6, and now this is the time of year where we can finally sit back and admire all the hard work that we put in during the spring and summer months. Today, we'll be showing you all of our food stores and even sharing why we do what we do, and our reasons might even surprise you.
When we wake, hear the birds and see the sun. Side by side our fears are done. Oh, the good times just begun. We know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life. Call us crazy, but things are finally right. With you and I, the future is bright.
Everything is officially down in our basement now, in our cold room, in canning jars, freezers, etc. But things are not organized. So today, we are gonna go through and organize everything and take you on a full pantry tour of what we have in our basement to last us through the winter to feed our family. The first thing that I really wanna get off of my mind is all of these potatoes. These have been curing now for quite a few weeks in this cold room, and now it's time to put them into crates and organize everything. To say that this white potato harvest was underwhelming is an understatement. It was extremely disappointing this year when it came to white potatoes. We'll definitely still have enough to get us through the winter. I'm very thankful for what we have, but they have a lot of disease. I think next year I just won't plant Yukon Gold at all. It just is not working for us. We have the virus Y again, and this year it was worse. But I'm just going through and sorting out all the potatoes that have this rotten spot on them. And these are gonna have to be used first. They are storing decently well. They're not just gonna rot, but the longer they sit, the deeper the bruises go. And so I just wanna use those first. When it comes to preserving food to actually feed a family over the course of the winter, my all-time favorite way of preserving food is putting it into a cold room or a root cellar. The reason for that is we can put like 500 to 600 pounds of food into a cold room or root cellar without any other means of preservation. So we don't have to freeze, we don't have to can. We can just cure the stuff and put it straight in here, and that makes a huge dent in our family's self-sufficiency goals. My number one crop for the cold room is white potatoes because they're so versatile. You can make them in like dozens and dozens of different ways. Mashed potatoes, baked potatoes. You can have French fries, you can have twice baked potatoes, you can put them in soups, stews, all sorts of meals have potatoes as a base. So this is something I can grow a ton of, yet we don't get tired of it because they're so versatile. Most years I really like to have around 400 pounds of potatoes. This year we had a very poor potato harvest for quite a few different reasons. So this year we only have 200 pounds of white potatoes. But then our sweet potatoes, which I'll show you here in a bit, did super well. They way outdid what they did last year, and so that kind of made up for our white potato crisis. I am sorting out all of the little potatoes because these little guys don't store nearly as long as the bigger ones. And these I just like to wash and throw them in with like a roast beef or something, skins on and everything. These are also really good for like the little marinated potatoes that you bake in like an oil marinade type of thing. I'm keeping the red Pontiac potatoes separate because these will go bad first. These will sprout before the Kennebec. The Yukon Gold potatoes look terrible this year, so those will probably have to be used even before the red Pontiac, but normally Yukon Gold that is disease-free will last a lot longer than the red Pontiac. In videos like this about our cold room, we often get a ton of questions about how we made this room, all the things. Cody does a much better job of explaining that than I do. And so I will have him link a video in which he goes more in depth on this topic at the end of this video. We got around, I think it was 300 pounds of sweet potatoes, and these are going to fill in those gaps with the white potatoes, thankfully. Sweet potatoes store incredibly well. They actually store better in our cold room than the white potatoes do. I don't have to pick sprouts off of these or anything. If they are cured properly, the skins get nice and thick. I can just put them into crates and they store until spring. With these sweet potatoes, I'm doing the exact same thing as I did with the white potatoes. I am picking out all of the smaller ones like this, and I will be using these first. These are really tender and soft and delicious. I don't even peel these. My best tip for having a successful cold room or root cellar is to focus on growing veggies that are a nice big size and that don't have a lot of disease and blemishes, because disease and blemishes and also just really small produce is not going to last. These will last for maybe a month or two, and then they'll start to shrivel and just kind of go to nothing. They don't like rot, they just shrivel up. My two very, very favorite varieties of potatoes, sweet potatoes to grow for cold storage. The two potatoes that have performed the best for me when it comes to sweet potatoes in cold storage are Covington and Bardaman. These are both bush varieties. They grow like the bulk of the potatoes at the base of the plant. The Bardaman are a lighter orange and they're like a little bit more dry than the Covington. I just always like to have two varieties so that I don't put all my eggs in one basket. And then the Covington are more, I don't know, they're more moist, and I don't like saying that word. And then the Covington are a darker orange and they're more moist. They're just a little bit sweeter as well, I think, but they're both delicious. Some of the potatoes like this, I probably shouldn't even have saved because these are already all like bendy, and yeah, these just aren't really worth keeping.
We've got 5 crates of onions over in this room that have been down here for a while, but we're gonna swap these around with the potatoes. We're gonna keep the onions and potatoes separate because the onions put off a gas, I forget what it's called, but I'll put it on the screen or something. Puts off a gas that will actually make the potatoes sprout faster. So we need to keep them separate, but it works best for us to cure the potatoes on this side because there's more shelf space. Also, our goal is to keep this side over here a little colder than this side, since this is the door that gets open to the rest of the basement. So our thinking is this side will stay cooler, and potatoes like cooler temperatures than onions do for storage. I think I say something about this every time that we talk about our cold cellar. Building a cold cellar is very simple, but there are a couple things that you want to make sure you do right. One of them, for sure, you have to have ventilation. Not only so that your crops stay fresher and healthier, but also for you, because there's gases that they put off that can actually kill you if they just sit in the room and they have nowhere to go. Not something to be scared of if you put ventilation in, but it's something to be aware of. And if you want some really good information on building a cold cellar or a root cellar, there's a book that we got called Root Cellaring by Mike and Nancy Bubel, and that has such good information in it. Very, very helpful, and that's a really good way to get you started. We started out with a few homemade wooden shelves for our cold cellar, and that worked, but not nearly as nice as these metal shelves. I absolutely love these. We got these from Home Depot. They're really good because they have this wire shelving, which allows for a lot of airflow. Same with these milk crates. These milk crates were given to us by somebody a long time ago, and they've got all the holes in the sides, and then you've got the slats in the shelves. The airflow is really good to keep the food lasting longer, but I also like these shelves because they're adjustable. So depending on whether we want to put crates or something else, or if we're wanting to cure the vegetables, we can fit a lot more shelves on one unit. It just makes it really, really easy.
We know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life. Life's crazy, but things are finally right. With you and I, the future is bright.
This could go so wrong.
You and I, we got it. We don't need no even in the hard times. You and I can weather any storm.
The next thing that I'm getting put away is these dried beans. These are navy beans, and then we have tiger's eye beans and red kidney beans. Dried beans are shelf stable, which makes them, whew, that's loud, which makes them an excellent, excellent food for self-sufficiency. So I like to have a lot of these around in my basement. These also are very high in protein. They're very filling and nutritious. I've had these beans just sitting out in a nice thin layer for about, I don't know, probably a month now, just to make sure that they're completely dry before I put them into like an airtight container like this. Now I can take these beans and I can poke them with my fingernail and there is no dent left over. I like to be very, very sure that they're dry because you could literally waste an entire year's worth of beans just by putting them into an airtight container before they're completely dried out. These 2 jars of beans are still left over from last year, and because they're shelf stable, I mean, they will last for years. These can then also very easily be used for seeds next spring. Dang corn is another super awesome storage food to have in your basement. This stuff will last forever as well. This stuff is still drying. You can tell it already has that dent in it. And when I poke this stuff with my fingernail, I cannot see a dent left from my fingernail. So this stuff is dry. The stuff we put on the bottom shelf here is still drying. So I'm going to leave all of it out for a few weeks yet just to make sure that that bottom shelf dries out completely. And then one of these days we will just shell all of this corn. Cody still has to figure out, he has to fix our sheller somehow. And we'll store this in food grade buckets. And then I can just put this through my grain mill and we can make corn tortillas, cornbread. This will really stretch our potatoes, sweet potatoes. It'll make so that we don't have to buy as much rice and pasta and stuff like that.
Back when our children were very small, I feel like we did pretty well with keeping up with having the right amount of beef in our freezers. But now that they're bigger and just seems like they're eating tons and tons of food, and we got a little bit off of our cycle of getting a beef butchered because we used to have a milk cow that would give us calves that we'd raise for beef. We're about out of beef again. So we just got a beef processed, what was it, this spring, and we're about out of beef. We still have some ground beef left right here. We've still got some steaks and roast. And then another thing that is really filling up this freezer here is this apple cider that we talked about in one of our recent videos. This cider is so good. And it works awesome to freeze it like this. Before I put it in the freezer, I just dumped some out of each jug and then stacked it in here, and we got 20 gallons of apple cider so that we can have apple cider all winter long. We actually have 2 steers out in the pasture right now that we're raising for beef, but they probably won't be ready until like next spring or summer, so we're probably gonna have to buy beef, which I don't like doing, but it is what it is. We have a friend that raises grass-fed beef, so it works out pretty well. But that's not the only meat we raise in our homestead. This here is our chicken freezer. And we have the chicken thing down pretty well. That's something that we can easily figure out how much we need year to year. And this year we did about 65 chickens, which I think is about what we did last year, and it was about perfect. We raised the Rainbow Ranger chickens, which we really like because they actually forage. We raise our chicken out on pasture, and we like that they actually eat the grass and the bugs instead of just sitting by the feeders like the white chickens do. And they get to a really nice size. And if you want to know more about how we raise our chicken, we have a video that covers the entire process from start to finish.
Next, I'm going to show you guys what is in our fruit and veggie freezer, but first I'm just going to pull everything out and organize it so I can actually show you guys what we have in here. First of all, cleaning out a freezer is very important because I always find food that's from last year that I really want to eat first. We really like to keep our food rotated through. We're not preppers. We just like to have nice homegrown food for our family to eat. And so we want to, instead of stockpiling things, we want to be working through things and every year trying to replenish that food. So I have some broccoli that I found that is still from 2024. Perfectly good broccoli. I'm just gonna stick it in the freezer over there so that I know to use it first. Here are some red beets from last year that need to be eaten and cilantro cubes. forgot I had these. One of the main veggies that I grow for sides is broccoli. The reason for that is because I personally, this is controversial, I personally find broccoli much easier to deal with than green beans. I can just cut off a big head of broccoli, blanch it, throw it in the freezer. None of the snipping that I have to do with green beans. I just feel like it's simpler and more efficient. So I have a whole bunch of broccoli in freezer bags. Here's still raspberries from 2024 that I need to figure out something to do with. I have lots of strawberries that came from our garden. I just like to put these in a nice thin layer in Ziploc bags, and I can just drop it on the counter and they fall apart. This is great for smoothies, anything that you need whole frozen strawberries for. I have a lot of them because our strawberries did very well this year. Stay. All of these containers here are pureed strawberries. I like to serve these with cookies for a dessert. My kids love to have strawberries and milk for snacks. And then these are all of the raspberries from this year. All of these little jars here are strawberry rhubarb jam and also raspberry jam. I really like to do a bunch of freezer jam. I know that you can can jam, and I do can some jam, but I think the freezer jam tastes fresher, and it's also easier. I can do it in like just small batches. When I have like a small batch of raspberries, I'll just throw it in jars, stick it in the freezer, and kind of skirt around the canning process. We have lots of sweet corn, which is super exciting. This is always such a treat in the middle of the winter. When it comes to things like sweet corn and broccoli, green beans, other veggies like that, I like to think of them as just something to fill in the gaps. And I like to think of our root crops like carrots, potatoes, and squash and onions. Those are the staples. And then all of the more time-consuming veggies like this just kind of fill in all the gaps that are left. I was on my way home from town one day and I saw a sign for local peaches, and so of course I had to stop. Stuff like this that we buy in, I don't do a ton of. This is not something that we're gonna be depending on. I just knew it would be a huge treat to have peaches sometimes to supplement the berries that we grew here on our farm. And so I got a couple boxes of these, stuck them in the freezer. Here's a beautiful stack of zucchini brownies that we froze. We've been slowly making our way through these. Still have a couple plates of these left. We have 3 freezers here in our basement, and whenever we do a pantry tour, people ask us, what happens if you have a power outage, anything like that? And honestly, for us, we are just not afraid to use modern means of preserving food. Our overall goal, like our priority in growing food, is just making so that our family has something nutritious to eat that we know exactly what went into. And then the preparedness aspect of it is just a huge added bonus for us. We do think about that, but our main concern, our main goal is just getting healthy food into our children. Honestly, the social pressures nowadays are just so much higher than they were back in the day when people were doing everything without all of the modern conveniences. And so just to be gracious to ourselves, we like to use modern ways of doing things. So for us, we have freezers and it doesn't bother us.
In the event of a power outage, we do have a generator that's big enough to power these freezers, plus a lot of other stuff in the house. I used an interlock kit on our breaker panel, and there's a plug on the outside of the house, so that can be plugged in, and then things can run kind of as normal, at least for a little while. The other nice thing, and this is a question we also get about having chest freezers versus an upright freezer, is food will stay frozen longer in a chest freezer than an upright freezer. So a full freezer can stay frozen for up to 3 days, even if there was a power outage. And if we did lose everything that was in our freezers, that would be awful. For real, it would be awful. But we do still have food that's not reliant on the grid. Stuff in our cold room, stuff on our canning shelf, our bulk dry goods. And that brings me back to this idea of growing food for your family out of fear. That wasn't the only reason, but that was a big part of the reason why we started homesteading. And we pretty quickly got to the place where we realized that's not the right mindset to do something out of. It can really quickly wear you out and burn you out, and it's not a good, joyful way to live. Fear is something that I've dealt with a lot. When we do our BetterHelp sponsorships on this channel, those BetterHelp sponsorships aren't just another way for us to make money. It truly is something we believe in. It's something that is real for everybody. Social media is full of all kinds of content that can lead you into fear. And that's something that we want to stay away from. We want to live out of a joy-filled life. We want to create a space here on our homestead that we raise our children to have fun and be happy and to enjoy things that come from our homestead. It's not something that they have to look at and be like, oh, we're doing this because our parents are scared of what might happen, but we're doing this because it's good for us and because it's a good quality lifestyle. All that being said, let's move on to the next thing. We have a bunch of carrots in this refrigerator. Do you remember how many pounds of carrots it was? 130 pounds of carrots that we store in a refrigerator. You can store carrots in a cold cellar if you store them in layers in sand. That looked like a lot of work for us, and we do have this extra refrigerator that we had when we were selling eggs. We would store all of our eggs in here to sell, and so this works really well. Michelle tapes them up in grocery bags and they store all winter long in here. And I'm not even sure if our cold room actually gets cold enough to store things like carrots. I know some people also store carrots just out in their garden. You just don't harvest them, leave them out there, and then you can pull them out as you need them. That can also definitely work if you mulch them, but it's something that if Michelle was ready to make a meal in the house and she needed some carrots, nobody's gonna really wanna go out there in the snow and dig up some carrots. So this just works a lot better.
I'm gonna go over all the things that I canned this year on my canning shelves. I canned more this year than I have any other year, and I'm so proud of it. But first, I'm gonna show you guys this drying rack. So it's almost done for the year. I still have some basil on here that's not quite done drying. I have some thyme and lavender and some parsley that's not quite done yet. Once these are all dried, I'll just take these upstairs and put them into glass jars with an airtight lid. I have a huge stash of herbs upstairs. I did a lot of herbs and teas and seasonings this year. I go much more in depth on all of the herbs that I dried, how I use them, etc. in another video. I'll have Cody either put that up on the screen or at the end or somewhere. I don't freeze dry or dehydrate my herbs or anything like that. I just use this very simple DIY drying rack. To me, it's just simple. Simplicity is everything for me with all the things I have in my brain. I leave them on here for a couple weeks until they're nice and dry and crispy. Put them in the blender, and then I can put them in an airtight container, and they will last all winter long and on into the coming years. I used to have all of my herbs down here with my canned goods, but we have LED lights down here that will fade the herbs, and that just means you're losing lots of nutrition. And so I have started putting all of my herbs upstairs in a dark, cool cupboard instead of down here where the light can hit them. Further on down here, I have all of my homemade tallow soaps. I save all of the suet from the cows that we get processed, and I make it into these delightful tallow soaps. I use this soap to wash the dishes. I use it for our bathing. I do not use it as shampoo, but we use it for pretty much everything else that we clean in our house. This is my giant labor of love. I did so much better with canning this year, and amazingly enough, I actually really enjoyed it. I think a huge difference for me is that my kids are old enough that they're not constantly just bugging me and interrupting me all the time. They can actually help. Most likely every year for the next like 10 years, I'll continue saying, oh, I canned more this year than I did last year because our kids are growing and just constantly like every year they're eating more and more and more. I did still keep things super simple with canning this year. I did mostly tomato products and then some pickles and green beans and applesauce. Those were like the 4 big things that I canned. So all of this here is barbecue sauce. I would say maybe half of this was from this year and half of it was from last year. Last year I had a really good tomato year, so I just did extra tomato products, and this year I had another really good canning year, so I just decided to just fill these shelves up with possibly moving this winter, hopefully, maybe. I was just thinking it would be nice if next year, if I have a new garden, I wouldn't have to depend so heavily on it because I don't know what kind of soil I'm gonna have, all the things. So I just kind of went crazy with all of my tomato products. All of this here is marinara. I use marinara for pasta and also pizza sauce. This over here is ketchup that was left over from last year. We don't eat a ton of ketchup because my kids prefer the barbecue, but I still like to have it on hand. And then all of this is zucchini relish in these cute little jars.
That don't work for canning.
And then I had an amazing cucumber year, and so I canned a ton of pickles, probably more than I ever have before. I also did green beans. I do wish that I had canned more green beans, but it just didn't happen. It's fine. I still have some in the freezer. I canned banana peppers, and I feel like they turned out really good, some of them, but then also some of them turned out pretty mushy. So I don't know if those were a win or not. This is still some leftover raspberry lemonade concentrate from last year, and this is salsa from last year. This is something new that we did this year. That was a huge hit, and I'm sure we'll do it again next year in a larger batch. This is apple butter, and it tastes absolutely insane. We got apples from a local orchard. All of this here is tomato juice. I use this for like tomato bisque and soups and things like that. Over here is all of my raspberry jam. This is one of my favorite things to do with tomatoes. I call these chunk tomatoes, and it's essentially the same as like diced tomatoes that you would get in a can in the store. And I just use it in anything like chili or anything tomato-y. It's just not nearly as tomato-y as like an all-out tomato sauce is. All that I do is stuff raw tomatoes in a jar with salt and can them up. So delicious. This here is chicken broth, bone broth that I had left over from pressure canning last year. And I'm sure I'll replenish this probably sometime this winter when I actually have the time. This is not something that I do during preserving season. And then, drum roll please, all of this is applesauce that we canned from a local orchard. We did all of this in one day. It was super fun, really great family activity. All of this is cinnamon sugar applesauce, and then this is raspberry applesauce, and then this is just the regular applesauce. And we decided to do more this year so that we wouldn't have to ration it quite as much. We're all very excited.
And down here below all the canned goods is our bulk dry goods. So we've got brown rice, salt, oats, Michelle's wheat berries, cane sugar. Something down here I wanted to show you real quick. This is popcorn that we grew here on our homestead. It is so cool. You just grow this like regular corn, leave it on the stalk till it's dry, and then it can be stored. Now, the reason I wanted to specifically point this out is because I wanted to ask if anybody out there knows of a corn sheller that will shell ears of corn that are this small. We have something, doesn't look like it's in this bucket here, called a little stripper. That's this little metal thing that you just go like this with it, and it takes the kernels off, but it takes so much time to do it by hand. And I've tried a couple different corn shellers, but they're made for larger ears of corn. So if anybody knows of a corn sheller for ladyfinger popcorn and can point us to it, I would really appreciate it, because I know we would eat a lot more of this popcorn if we could actually shell it easier. The other thing that I wanted to point out here was this bucket of salt. We are almost out. We need to get more. This is Redmond real salt. You can see the flecks in there, but it still has the minerals in it. I remember our family using this salt all the way back when I was a kid, and Michelle and I have used it ever since we were married. We buy that salt in 25-pound bags, and it might seem crazy how often we go through it, but when you're homesteading and cooking all of your meals from scratch, doing all this canning, it takes a lot of salt. It's not the same as when you buy a boxed meal that already has a lot of sodium in it. And I wanted to let you guys know that we actually just recently partnered up with Redmond, and we have a discount code from them. We've gotten a lot of questions about where we get our salt. So now if you want to get your salt in bulk from Redmond Real Salt, there's a discount code in the description below. Michelle is going to make a list of all of her favorite things to store, how she stores each one, and then also for the things that we buy, where you could buy it for yourself if you want it. And we're going to make a downloadable PDF of that we'll put in the description below. And just as promised, those 2 videos that we said we'd put at the end of the video, here they are. Oh. Just about can't.